Black females in charge of the jail and 10 Pookies make a jailbreak. Sad, just sad. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this spooktacular Spinsterella story. Pick up your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. 10 inmates made a daring escape from a New Orleans jail in Louisiana.
Well, the search is ongoing for a group of inmates who escaped from a jail in the heart of New Orleans. ABC's Dave Packer has the latest.
These photos released by New Orleans officials show inside the cell where they say 10 men escaped, prompting an intense search. Authorities announcing some of the escapees have been captured. Photos show a dislodged toilet inside one of the cells and the words "too easy" scribbled above, pointing to a hole where the inmates are believed to have escaped. The sheriff says deputies discovered the men were missing during a routine head count.
And based on video surveillance, they were seen exiting a door on the docks where we normally bring in supplies, scaling a wall, and running across the interstate.
Officials say at least 2 inmates have been captured, including Kendall Miles, who was found less than 3 miles away from the jail hiding beneath a car. Miles is charged with attempted second-degree murder. The other inmates facing charges from murder to aggravated assault. Officials believe someone inside the jail system may have helped the inmates escape.
We have reason to believe that there was some assistance with this. That's why we're thoroughly investigating. We placed 3 individuals on administrative leave pending the outcome of this investigation.
The U.S. Marshals are assisting with the manhunt, and the FBI announced a $5,000 reward for tips leading to the capture of the escapees. Dave Packer, ABC News, New York.
Now, according to reports, an inmate threatened 33-year-old Sterling Williams, a maintenance worker at the sheriff's office who was working at the Orleans Justice Center in New Orleans, and after threatening to shank this maintenance worker if he did not turn the water off, this is where this maintenance worker allegedly decided to comply with the threats of the inmates who participated in this escape by turning off the water inside of a handicapped jail cell. Now, after this worker, Sterling Williams, allegedly turned off the water inside of this handicapped toilet in the handicapped cell, he wound up making it possible for these 10 inmates to basically take further advantage of issues as related to the security at the Orleans Justice Center. Now, as these inmates basically the next day came out of their cells due to defective locks on their cells, they then went into the handicapped cell, pried the toilet off the wall, and after prying the toilet off the wall, they managed to use some sort of tool to cut through the bars inside of the behind the cell, and managed to go out here and even have enough time in the half hour that they came into the cell, because they came into the cell about 12:23, and after they came into the cell at 12:23, they basically were able to cut the bar and then able to go through the bar and in the cell. And as they came through the bar in the cell, one of the inmates basically wrote several messages, including putting up a smiley face, mocking the people who worked at the Orleans Justice Center by saying "too easy, LOL." And after making that message, they then escaped through the back of the jail and were caught on video running off a loading dock in the back of the cell. And one of the individuals who was a part of this great Pookie escape basically had a blanket that helped all the inmates be able to overcome the barbed wire by covering it up. And as they climbed over the fence, they then came over the fence, then ran eastbound on the lanes of Interstate I-10, and then entered a local neighborhood in New Orleans to make their escape. And after making their escape, they weren't even found until 8:30 in the morning. I mean, it took several hours for the staff worker to find out that these inmates had made their escape, and there was no alert to the public until much later, showing a complete collapse of the entire securing of this whole Orleans Justice Center, and showing a complete failure of leadership as related to the sheriff and her being in charge of this facility. Now, the sheriff of this facility, Susan Hutton, is being held directly accountable by some people for leading up to this Great Pookie escape. And this entire Great Pookie escape basically is something that is a complete black eye for the entire state of Louisiana as related to its criminal justice system, because it shows the complete failure of that system as related to detaining and holding inmates into custody. Now, this whole situation was one that basically was building up to be a disaster for many years, because this jail, like New York's Rikers Island, is under federal oversight due to years of corruption and failure all around, as alleged. And this whole system basically was shown that it just has not improved, even with federal oversight, because this whole situation that to lead to this entire collapse of security at this jail shows that nobody was really paying attention as related to this situation. Now, many want to make Susan Hutton or the maintenance worker the scapegoat as related to things. A lot of people really want to make Sterling Williams the scapegoat and the fall guy of this whole situation, and they arrested Sterling Williams for allegedly turning off that water. But I really believe that the problems really start with all the women who were in charge, starting with Susan Hutton, the sheriff, who was supposed to be in charge of that facility. Susan Hutton really was the one who was supposed to be in charge of this facility, and there had to be a major failure of leadership for this maintenance worker to not feel confident to go to anybody who was in charge to deal with this whole situation, because a maintenance worker should be a person who, again, is at the lowest rung as related to things, and they should feel confident to be able to go to the people who are the guards in the jail or higher level staff to let them know that they have been threatened by an inmate, and let that person know that this is a problem. However, because I believe Sterling Williams didn't have any sort of support from anybody in management, that's why he possibly complied with this whole situation as related to giving these inmates a pass by turning off the water inside of that handicapped jail cell, because there was no leadership whatsoever from all of these females. Now, when it comes to a lot of black women, again, you can't really tell them anything because they're always right, and that could be the whole situation as related to Susan Hutton and many of the staff there. Now, according to reports, what they're saying as related to this Great Pookie escape is that this jail basically had serious problems, even with the whole federal issue, and they had problems with the locks not working in many of the cells, which was already one big problem that really should have been checked out, because that really put inmates at risk. And they also had a problem with the way they basically placed these inmates, because according to some reports, this was supposed to be a more minimum security situation, but you had individuals who basically had felonies like murder and attempted murder inside of this pod, and that in and of itself, assigning these individuals to this type of pod as they're waiting for trial is a red flag for me as related to protecting public safety. These individuals, as I see it, should have never been inside of that pod whatsoever. No, they shouldn't have been assigned to that pod. And what even exacerbates everything is that you've got, again, maximum security individuals in a possible medium or minimum security pod, and that pod basically has cells with locks that are broken. Again, when it comes down to inmates are supposed to be locked down at night. They're supposed to be locked down at night as related to their safety and the safety of people who are securing the jail. And there are supposed to be guards basically on patrol as related to those pods. Moreover, there's supposed to be guards out here monitoring those pods to ensure that there's somebody supervising things. However, according to reports, there was not much staff as related to the pod at that Orleans jail center. And since that one person, who again was not a deputy, was watching the pods, decided to step away from their post, this is where these individuals took that opportunity to basically come out of their cells with the already bad locks. Because again, when you consider a jail, people are supposed to be locked down in that jail, and they're supposed to be locked down at night. I mean, that's just the way it usually goes. But with there being no one there, and this guy stepping away from him or her post, that's what some reports say. Some reports say that it was a woman stepping away from her post to get something to eat, or a woman stepping away from her post, again, as related to things, or falling asleep. That's what these different reports say. But it's basically, you had an employee who was not paying attention to their post, and as they weren't paying attention to the monitors of that cell pod, what happened was these individuals came out of their cell pod, and sadly there were no alarms on any of those cell pods. And as they came out of their cell pods, they went into this unoccupied handicapped cell, then pried the toilet off the wall, and basically pried this toilet off the wall. And I'm looking at that and wondering how you can do that, because I thought toilets were supposed to be bolted to the wall. And I'm also wondering how they were able to basically break through the bar, because usually inmates aren't supposed to have tools to be able to do this. Or I have to wonder if this place was constructed properly, because it shouldn't be where an inmate should be able to, again, be able to break through these kinds of bars. But these inmates were able to do this, and as they were able to do this, what happened was we had all 10 of these individuals basically wind up bolting out of their pod as related to their cell block. And as they went out here and broke through that wall, they then rushed out of this place, and again led to this great Pookie escape. A great Pookie escape that basically happened due to what I believe to be matriarchal leadership over this jail, that led to this whole inside situation. An inside situation because you had a female in charge, and as this female was in charge of the sheriff's department, she basically presented a face of weak leadership in the presence of things, and also didn't go out here and effectively staff that entire jail. Did not effectively staff that entire jail. Now, she's making the excuse that it was all about the budget. That's the excuse that she is making. That's the same excuse that the black female mayor is making, and many of the other females that were in charge. But the whole thing is, it just shows how disorganized these females were. And as they were disorganized, basically what these male inmates did was see all of the disorganization. And as they saw the disorganization of this female leadership, what they did was go out here and look to take advantage of this situation. And as they looked to take advantage of this situation, because in order for these guys to go out here and make this type of major breach to security, they had to have been studying things at this jail for an extended period of time. Because when it comes down to an inmate, they basically had to have been studying things for an extended period of time, just studying the patterns of the guards and seeing the lapses as related to the guards. They had to be studying the complete lapses as related to the maintenance of this whole facility, because if you've got doors that are not locking properly during lockdown, again, these guys had to notice this going all around. Moreover, they had to notice that nobody's coming to punish them for, again, breaching the security over time, because I believe that this was done over time. These guys basically saw, hey, this door is open right here. I can just go right out of my cell. I'm seeing that the locks ain't really locking. These guys are basically sitting there studying things, and as they studied things, this is where they started to see, okay, the security here is kind of weak, and they started to also look at the patterns of things, and possibly were able to get access to possible blueprints of the building, and possibly were able to get access to blueprints of the building, and eventually possibly were able to find that maintenance guy and let him know, okay, you're gonna go out here and turn off this water. That I believe that this was an elaborate plan that took time for these inmates to plan, but they were able to implement these plans due to the weak leadership of the black female sheriff, Susan Hutton, and also were able to take advantage of the way she just mismanaged and mishandled the staffing of very secure parts of the facility, because to only have one person basically monitoring all of these pods, or just this pod, was very dangerous. Again, from my experience, again, working different jobs, usually what happens is that you don't have one person just monitoring things. You usually have maybe two people monitoring things, so that if one person doesn't catch something, somebody else can catch something. And usually, if a person wants to go get something to eat, they can't leave unless somebody else is there, and that ensures that somebody is watching things. So it really shows me that this woman really was incompetent as related to managing and supervising this jail, and that's what led to the opportunity that all of these Pookies had to go out here and break out of this facility, because this woman was not on point as related to the way she staffed this whole place. Now, some people say that she basically wound up staffing this whole place, again, due to budget issues, but I gotta call BS on that, and I just believe that basically she wound up staffing this place on the cheap, because that's what many females love to do. They love to do things on the cheap, basically trying to impress people in an effort to get themselves to move up. I believe that's why she basically went out here, and instead of hiring a deputy to be in charge of monitoring that whole video as related to the security cameras, she went out here and hired a staffer as that is not a deputy. And then this person, again, just they didn't take their job seriously, and as they didn't take their job seriously, they basically led to these guys getting confident, because they felt emboldened, because they felt, oh, since the door is unlocked, we can come out, and then as we can come out, basically nobody's gonna watch us. And as the staffer again went to go get something to eat, again, they were gone for hours as related to things. They said they didn't notice anything until about a couple of hours later, showing me that maybe this person thought that they got the hookup on this job and they didn't have to take this job very seriously. That's what I see as related to this whole situation. I mean, just a complete collapse of leadership all around, because in order for all these employees to not really be effective at their jobs, they had to have been given a pass by the woman in charge, Susan Hutton, the sheriff, who basically, I think, didn't take her job very seriously, because a lot of times when you have females in charge of positions like this, they don't really take their jobs that seriously as related to things. They basically think, oh, the cells are going to do the job for them. No, you got to watch many of these inmates. You got to watch them all the time, because, yeah, you may have long periods where their doors, nobody's doing anything, but if there's a breach, you gotta see it and see it for what it is, because I believe that these guys basically breached the security a long time ago. But I'm just sitting there wondering why there were no alarms on the doors as related to these cells. I mean, if these cells open up and they're opened up and there's a breach with them, I mean, they're supposed to have an alarm on them, which shows me that there's some faulty design here as related to things. But that doesn't take away any accountability from this sheriff, who basically did not have a good relationship with her staff, because this maintenance worker, Sterling Williams, should have felt safe enough to go out here and report to people. But I think what happened with dude is that he ran into one of these black females who basically gave him that belligerent black woman attitude, and since he felt like he couldn't talk to anyone, that's why he went along. And what they want to do now is make him the fall guy, because he turned off the water. But I really believe that the real fall guy is Susan Hutton, who basically went out here and again did not set a standard for leadership for her staff, because when it comes down to these situations, usually it's a bad manager that makes the whole situation a mess. This is what I ran into myself myself, when I was working at the City College Science Library, the place was just, it was in dysfunction because you had a beta male running things, and a beta male had a female up under them. And again, when you have beta males and females running something, it's not going to run right. It's not going to run right at all. And that's what I believe led to the whole situation, which led to this great Pookie escape, a great Pookie escape that basically is a black eye for the city of New Orleans and a black eye for the state of Louisiana as related to this whole Orleans Justice Center, where it was just a hot mess where Pookie, Ray Ray, Naheem, and all 10 of these guys basically broke out of this jail. And what's even more disturbing than the incompetence of the females basically running this jail straight into the ground was that these guys had support from women on the outside who basically helped several of these inmates make an attempt to further escape. And possibly that's what really is what they did. Now, again, that's another black eye because it shows how many black women will go out here and side with Pookie. Now, one of the women who was arrested was almost 60 years old, showing how many of these women basically will do anything for Pookie. I mean, they will basically put their own intangibles, such as their health, safety, and their freedom at risk, all for Pookie, and shows me how sad things are in the black community as related to black women, that they would go out here and help out these guys who are basically, again, hardcore felons who are out here who are looking to go out here and make their escape and not take any accountability. But what's even more disturbing is that the women who were in charge of this jail didn't want to take any sort of accountability whatsoever for the way they basically mismanaged this jail by going out here and taking these hardcore felons and putting them in a minimum or medium security cell block, going out here and then on top of it not staffing that cell block with adequate people as related to patrolling that cell block and monitoring that cell block, and then making an environment where, again, this maintenance worker, Sterling Williams, did not have a confidence or encouragement to go out here and feel like he was safe enough to go out and be able to report to his superiors that he had been threatened. I mean, this whole situation basically mirrors the dysfunction that goes on in many inner city neighborhoods that are run by black women. Many of the inner city neighborhoods run by black women have the same type of chaos going on, because whenever you put females in charge as related to leadership positions, a lot of times they run on emotion like that staff worker who was allegedly either sleeping or went out to go get something to eat, depending on what report you hear. Again, that's not supposed to be the standard. No, the standard is even for basic positions, like when I was a grocery bagger at Food Emporium. Again, I couldn't leave my post until somebody else relieved me. And usually in the case of daycare centers, again, you can't leave until somebody relieves you. But this person just decided to walk away from their post unsupervised, and that should have been troubling because, again, this person was supposed to be monitoring the video cameras and monitoring the video surveillance, and they didn't monitor that surveillance. No, they basically took their job for granted, and as they took their job for granted, they basically put the safety of everyone in New Orleans and the state of Louisiana and the country in jeopardy, because all these individuals eventually wound up breaking through that wall in that handicapped jail cell and made the great Pookie escape, showing how when it comes down to females, they have a soft spot for Pookie. And this is why matriarchal leadership is dangerous, because matriarchal leadership, again, is all based on emotions and how they feel about Pookie. And whenever it comes to black women, we know that they got a soft spot for Pookie. And will look to give him a pass. However, giving him that pass could have put many lives in jeopardy. Now, thank God they've managed to capture 5 of these individuals in this great Pookie escape. And as they've managed to capture 5 of these individuals in this great Pookie escape, there are still 5 more on the run, and as these 5 more are on the run, it's basically showing me that, again, when you have females in leadership positions, again, it's not a good thing, because these guys basically saw the weakness of these females, took advantage of all the gaps that they left in security because they were running the place based on how they felt. And as they were running the place based on how they felt, they again made all of these tactical mistakes that basically led to these guys being able to, one, be able to again breach the doors of their cells. Then, as they breached the doors of their cells, because there were no alarms on and nobody watching the monitors, they basically went into this handicapped cell and managed to jimmy that lock. Again, this had to take months of planning. And again, I think it's more than an inside job. Some people say it was just an inside job with this maintenance worker, but I believe that there were more people possibly involved. And if they do an investigation, they might possibly find that some of these females had a thing for Pookie and possibly manipulated some of these doors and possibly manipulated some of the cameras, because in order for those guys to be able to do this, again, somebody had not been watching, or somebody may have not been watching, and that all might have been because many of these places, like the government and places, they love to hire females over males, and they love to hire females over males. Like, this is what I experienced with the City University of New York hiring Pool 4 civil service. They love to hire females because they're cheaper. They love to hire females because they're more docile and more submissive. However, when it comes down to a jail, you don't really want females in charge of these places because they're submissive to men, they're docile when they're in the presence of men, and when they get in the presence of Pookie, that's where their panties start to get damp. And as their panties start to get damp, they start looking to do favors for Pookie that basically put the entire jail in jeopardy and put many people's safety in jeopardy. That's what happens in these cases as related to Pookie. And putting Pookie and black women together is like putting oil and water together in a security situation, and that's basically what I believe happened here. They got all turned on by Pookie and looked to again give him that pass to go and make this great escape because they got sympathetic to his stories of, oh, woe is me. But as they got sympathetic to his situation as related to woe is me, they basically again made a mess for the parish, Orleans Parish Sheriff Susan Hudson, who was running for re-election and was looking to coast as related to being a blue party sheriff, but now is in a place where she has got to suspend her campaign because her reputation has been tarnished. And this is par for the course when it comes down to matriarchal leadership. Whenever there's matriarchal leadership, you get people whose reputations get tarnished because females weren't designed by God to lead. They were designed to help meet the needs of men. And what these women wanted to do was help meet the needs of Pookie and help Pookie make this great escape on the outside, and I believe on the inside. They want to make it where this guy, Sterling Williams, is the fall guy, but I don't believe he is the fall guy. I believe he was basically in a work environment where he was dealing with the belligerent black woman and dealing with the belligerent black woman's attitude as related to things. And since she basically was someone he couldn't come and talk to and couldn't trust, he basically felt like he just had to do this because he didn't want to get shanked. Again, this was an environment that was created by these females, and it created an environment where they basically made a mess. They didn't know how to manage this facility, did not know how to staff this facility, and this is why we had a whole situation, again, a powder keg going on, because when you mix female guards or females in charge with Pookie, you're going to get females who go out here and possibly, I believe, break the law almost every time or make a mess of things, because when it comes to black women, they've always got a soft spot for Pookie, but sadly, every time they get a soft spot for Pookie, it leads to them going from being the single successful black woman to winding up with her life being made a complete mess. And that's what I believe happened here as related to this great Pookie escape, a great Pookie escape that's one big black eye for the entire state of Louisiana. Now, if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to see me continue to make videos taking the whole situations like this to the barbecue, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA, from the Black Boule, in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteemed series adventure. Pick up your copy of Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.